Episode 10 of Grotesquerie begins with Lois driving home to find Marshall and Red waiting for her. Marshall propositions the idea of letting bygones be bygones and all three of them living together. Lois is incredulous over this and outright refuses, of course. Lois kicks the pair out and in the car, Red opens up to Marshall. She doesn't love him anymore and also knows that he's been sleeping around while they've been together. She's confronted her own hang-ups and kicks him out of her house. Red reveals she doesn't really love him anymore, and it seems she just liked the idea of being with him rather than actually being with him. Marshall lets his frustrations out at the classroom, where he angrily retorts to the students that he likens society's decay with ancient Rome. However, he cuts the lecture short when Megan shows up with her colleague at the door. One of the students, Mary Colesby, has come forward with some pretty serious sexual abuse allegations. Marshall shows off some of his innocent messages, but Megan reveals that the DA has her account and has made the decision based on this. She also points out that she's always going to believe the women in this situation. Nice bit of impartial police work there, Megan. However, Marshall is far from a saint, and that night, he tries to end his life. He pops pills, and both Red and Merritt show at the hospital in turn as he's recovering. The former sees this as a cry from help, while Merritt can barely bring herself to look at her father. Back home, Marshall receives a text from Ed. He wants him to join their men's group, which happened to be a radical group with very conservative views about life and men in general. There's chatter about strong men, pronouns, and a need to go back to more conventional ways of living, and we even catch glimpses of Charlie, Lois' therapists, and Dr. Merritt too. Meanwhile, Lois speaks to Dr. Whitcomb at the hospital. She's frazzled and suffering from Cotard's syndrome, at least according to Whitcomb's assessment. Lois is paranoid, notices the camera filming her, and isn't sure what's real and what's not. Whitcomb reveals that her scientific data has been shared with hundreds of different doctors, including Merritt too. Lois goes on to accuse Charlie of being a sexual deviant, and has her suspicions that Megan is involved in a massive cover-up too. According to Lois, Megan enlisted Gloria's help to cover up the entire motel room scene and keep Justin's death under wraps. Megan, though, claims this was all to do with a separate fentanyl case. As Lois continues, she also accuses Whitcomb of being the killer. But he has an alternate theory. Given her time loss and disorientation, he suggests that she may actually be the killer. Back in her padded cell, Lois receives a visit from Megan. She affirms Lois' suspicions and claims that she lied about Justin but needs her to check out a crime scene with her. We then cut to Lois wearing her clothes and heading to the church. It's a bloodied scene of the Last Supper with Charlie in the position of Jesus Christ. Furthermore, there are figures on either side, just like in Lois' initial vision, and one of them happens to be Mary Colesby. Lois believes she knows who's responsible for this and walks out the church. "Oh, Ryan Murphy, why do we keep giving you second chances?" It seems every show Murphy develops, he botches the ending. Grotesquerie is no exception. Look, I know this isn't the end of the story, but there's no resolution to anything, and even worse, we also get some pretty weird and shoehorned scenes in here. The entire segment involving Marshall heading to the men's club feels like a massive over-the-top rant from the writers rather than something Marshall himself would say, and it's becoming difficult to discern what's actually going on here. The show hides behind its visions as a way of confounding audiences, but to be honest, I think it's clear that Lois' psyche is fractured and we're seeing two timelines play out at once. Lois has not left the psych ward, nor would she be allowed to, and I'd imagine she's trying to figure all of this out inside her head. It's pretty convenient that Megan shows up the very same night that Whitcomb casts doubts in her mind, and then they just show up at the church and everybody relies on Lois. I think a lot of this, including the over-the-top emphasis on Marshall's life falling apart, are all of Lois' feelings being projected out onto those around her, and all of this is happening inside Lois' head. It wouldn't surprise me if Whitcomb has actually done hypnosis or put her back into this coma again to try and get more answers. We do see pieces of the puzzle, including magazine covers about the Bible, word puzzles, and cryptic chatter that seems to link toward parts of the other timeline, just like we did with the balloons. I mean, look at all those men in the club. They're all wearing different outfits and certainly not the same people we've met across the show's runtime. Still, the ending leaves more questions than answers, with a lackadaisical pacing and a plot that doesn't seem to be in much of a hurry to get to the bottom of what's happening. Hopefully Season 2 can improve and pick up, because this episode was a pretty poor way to end things.